In the Mexican language Nahuatl, the word Tonantzin means sacred mother. Before the Spanish came, the Aztecs were already worshipping a Tonantzin on Tepeyac Hill. This is the Lady of Guadalupe image. And this is the statue of Coatlicue, Aztec mother goddess. And it seems Tepeyac Hill never stopped being feminine holy ground. I'm going to recreate the Guadalupe image and then add a painting of the goddess Coatlicue mirror style. This took some days and several cups of coffee, but the subject is super interesting and it's what kept me going. I start by drawing over a copy of the original Guadalupe image. I want the structure to be as close as possible so that I can make it as symmetrical as possible when I draw Coatlicue later on. I'm not sure if I should do the Castilian roses in the background, or maybe not. I'll decide later on. The two original images are totally different at first glance. The image of Our Lady of Guadalupe is, in many ways, a classical artistic depiction of Mary. You have the innocent demeanor, the blue mantle, the Renaissance-style cherub, basically a basic Mary from the Catholic world. I'm from the Philippines, which, like Mexico, was conquered by the Spaniards in the 1500s. We also grew to love the Lady of Guadalupe. She even became the country's patroness for a while. In pre-Hispanic times, many of us were either Muslims or animists. In many ways, we can relate with the Mexican love for their homeland-tinted Mother Mary. Though deeply Catholic, we've never been able to totally let go of our polytheistic tendencies. So the Spanish did what they do best. They let us keep our anitos and diwatas, our forest spirits, earthbound deities, and fertility goddesses. But they became either monsters or Marias. And it seems to be the same thing where Guadalupe is concerned. They let the Nahua people keep Tonantzin, their sacred mother, on the same sacred hill, but in a different guise. There are many parts of the story still shrouded in mystery and doubt. It doesn't really bother me to consider that the Juan Diego story may be a fiction, calculated to convert as many Mexicans as possible to the Catholic faith. Be that as it may, this image became a national icon, larger than life, as good as legend, which is a miracle in and of itself. It's a work of art. I thought I'd copy the exact same thing here, down to the shading, but I realized that the original has a strange style of lighting. The way Guadalupe is shaded is like a low-relief sculpture, like the image is meant to be shallowly carved on stone. I want the figure to stand out more, like a figurine, not a relief, so I'll be changing the shading as I go along. It's very interesting to further study an already familiar image like this. Many elements of the Guadalupe image are perfect for courting the love of native Mexicans. The story happened in a sacred hilltop near the winter solstice, and Mary is indeed in thermal wear. After years of looking at this image, I never realized she was dressed for the cold and wearing a fleece-lined garment like Santa Claus. The flower patterns on her dress are said to be of local flowers, and the sun rays behind her are spiked and wavy like agave leaves. And like the old goddess Coatlicue, the Virgin of Guadalupe is also pregnant. They wear the same sign of pregnancy, the black waistband. And by some odd coincidence, they're both pregnant by Immaculate Conception. For Mary, it's the first time. One day, an angel came to visit the young innocent woman and informed her that she was carrying the Son of God. And for this honor, she's blessed beyond measure, given dominion over heaven and earth. She's wearing the sky. The stars are sprinkled on her mantle. The sun is behind her, or she's wearing it as an extra layer, it's not totally clear, and she's standing on the moon. Coatlicue has already had hundreds of children. Her statue, at an intimidating 8 feet tall, clearly depicts the rose on her belly, her sagging breasts, the ultimate mother. Her first hundreds of children have a father, the cloud serpent Mixcoatl. One day, she's sweeping the temple when a magical ball of feathers descends on her. She then becomes pregnant with the supreme Aztec god of war. When her children find out about the pregnancy, they're angry because they think their mother must have cheated on their father. Her children, a daughter and 400 sons, came to confront their mother. They chopped off her head, and Huitzilopochtli, the supreme war god, burst forth, fully grown like the Greek goddess Athena. He crushes his siblings in battle. He flings his sister's head to space, where it becomes the moon. Their 400 brothers become the stars of the southern sky. He himself became the sun god. There are other versions of this story, but this one is probably why the statue we're studying is headless. Back to the Guadalupe image. In spite of its initial impression of virginal innocence, it symbolically dominates the myth of Coatlicue. She's depicted as more powerful than the sun, moon, and stars. She's wearing them, obscuring them. It also helps that Mary is traditionally known for crushing the serpent's head. Meanwhile, the fierce Coatlicue is just living in snakes. Her name means serpent-skirted, and her skirt is literally snakes. I made a sketch of the original statue just to get a feel of the elements. We have the strange eagle feet, the skull on her waist, the black waistband of pregnancy, the bulky build, and the necklace strung with human hearts and hands. And of course, the multitude of angry-looking snakes. To complement the Guadalupe image though, I'm drawing Coatlicue with an actual head and hands. In some ways, the Aztec Empire was already collapsing when the Spanish came. Yes, it was a wealthy, functioning kingdom, but there were many detractors. The regime was too bloody. Cities simply didn't want to keep sending human sacrifices to the capital anymore. So it wasn't very hard for the conquistadors to find local allies. There is one myth about how Coatlicue foretold the collapse of the empire. Moctezuma II, or Montezuma, the God King, was the last ruler of the Aztec Empire. It's said that he once sent 60 magicians to visit Coatlicue in Aztlan, the mythical home of the Aztecs, something like the Garden of Eden. It was a quest for supreme knowledge, but the magicians, staggering under the weight of their gifts, sank one by one into quicksand. Coatlicue's message was that the Aztec cities would fall in the same way, one by one. Stories of bad omens like this one spread across the empire in the early 1500s. Sightings were reported of magical temples floating in the sea. These were ships. The conquistadors were approaching. In the year 1519, Hernan Cortes marched into the city. Soon after that, King Moctezuma was forced to declare himself a subject of Charles V and to allow a crucifix placed on top of the Great Temple, where Coatlicue's son was worshipped. His subjects were unhappy with his weakness and overthrew him, but to no avail. Weakened by illness and political turmoil, the Aztec Empire soon fell completely to the Spaniards. 10 years later, Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared on Tepeyac Hill. For the background, I consider doing flowers. Castilian roses are an important part of the Guadalupe origin story, and I was thinking to complement that with some sort of local flower for Coatlicue. But then I thought of William Turner's landscapes, which are super misty and moody, and decided to go with something like that instead. Basically just super blurred valleys under super blurred skies. I've always wanted to do a Guadalupe recreation, like I said, just for kicks. When I was in grade school, my mom painted a small version of it for her personal altar, and I helped her to do the sun rays. Then last year, I was listening to the Spirits podcast, where I learned about Coatlicue. When they started describing the statue, I knew I was going to draw them both. Back in the early days of the Spanish conquest, in 1521, the statue of Coatlicue disappeared. The native people buried many artifacts instead of destroying them, so it resurfaced more than 200 years later in 1790 in the main plaza of Mexico City. That same year, the famous Aztec sunstone was also discovered buried near the Mexico City Cathedral. While scholars were able to defend the public display of the sunstone for art and history's sake, the statue of Coatlicue was considered way too threatening. It was reburied because the good professors of the University of Mexico were afraid it would provoke pagan worship. In 1803, explorer/historian/many other things, Alexander von Humboldt had it excavated for research purposes. In 1823, Coatlicue was dug out for good and is now displayed in Mexico's National Museum of Anthropology. Though the worship of Coatlicue, she of the serpent skirt, is reduced to a sacred memory, the veneration of Guadalupe is alive and kicking, 500 years strong. She's a huge chunk of Mexico's national identity, so much so that in 1810, when Miguel Hidalgo fought for Mexican independence, his battle cry was, "Death to the Spaniards, and long live the Virgin of Guadalupe." So after the Spanish conquest for God, gold, and glory, it seems that only God remained. And in 1990, Mexican poet Octavio Paz wrote, "After 2 centuries of experiment and failure, the Mexican people only believe in the Virgin of Guadalupe and the National Lottery." So here they are, the beloved Lady of Guadalupe, venerated now for almost 500 years, and her ancient shadow, the Tonantzin Coatlicue. Are you still with me? I have no idea if this is at all interesting to anyone else, but I'm putting it out there just in case. It's May 2020, quarantine time, and if you're bored, uneasy, or restless, I'm right there with you. I hope this helped you pass the time wherever you are. Stay safe.